Hello, everyone. Welcome to LeadUpTeach on YouTube Live. We just wrapped up a lively LeadUp chat discussion on professional development inspired by our guest, who I will introduce in a moment. Right now, I have the honor of hosting LeadUpTeach Live along with Heidi Veal and Elizabeth Bostwick. I'm Laura Gilchrist, and I'm an instructional coach and longtime teacher in Kansas City. I'm passionate about designing learning experiences, schools, and cities together around our kids so they walk confidently into their futures. This morning, we're excited to welcome Rich Czyz. And I love his name because if you put it together, it sounds like Rich. And his book is Rich in PD. And Rich Czyz is the co-founder of the 4 O'Clock Faculty blog, a blog for educators looking to improve instruction and learning. Rich is also the author of the book, 4 O'Clock Faculty, a rogue guide to revolutionizing professional development. He's here to talk about shifting professional development culture. Heidi, please introduce yourself.
Great. Hi, everyone. My name is Heidi Veal, and I'm the Early Childhood Program Administrator in Louisville ISD in North Texas. And I, along with Liz and Laura, co-founded and co-lead LeadUpTeach as a branch off of LeadUp Chat. We're so glad that everyone was able to join the chat this morning and then jump over here today on YouTube. I also co-founded and co-moderate ECE Chat on Tuesday nights, and I'm passionate about leadership, innovative learning, of course, early childhood education, and ECE Chat. And so, Liz, before we get any further, would you go ahead and introduce yourself too?
Absolutely. Good morning, everyone. It was great to participate in the chat and hear from everybody. I'm Elizabeth Bostwick, and I'm a teacher in New York. I'm passionate about empowering learners to foster innovative thinking and just helping kids flourish and shine. Rich, we're just pumped to have you on. And Rich's username on Twitter is @RACZYZ, and it's at 4 O'Clock Faculty. And his website is 4o'clockfaculty.com. Rich, we are ready to be inspired by you, so please introduce yourself.
Hi, Rich Czyz. I am a principal in New Jersey, elementary principal, grades 2 and 3, as well as preschool. I am passionate about engaging all stakeholders in meaningful and relevant learning, and that is kind of what the book is about, is those educators taking charge of their own professional learning. So I am excited to be here, and thank you for the opportunity.
All right, well, welcome again, Rich. We would like to give a special welcome to our LeadUpTeach audience here on YouTube and also LeadUp Chat PLN. We invite everyone to use the hashtag LeadUpTeach to connect and participate with the chat both during and after the conversation.
All right, Rich, so to get us started, please share us about your journey with us, the journey that led you to be the inspiring educator that you are today.
So I started as a 5th grade math and science teacher, and there's actually something that happened when I was in my first year of teaching. My district started to implement a new writing program. And as I said, I was teaching math and science. I wasn't necessarily going to be using the new writing program, but the district went ahead and had a year-long professional development series on the writing program. And it was something where, while it was great for the ELA teachers in our building, I wasn't necessarily getting anything out of it. And the one critical mistake that I made was really just complaining about it. And so every time I would attend the monthly meeting on the writing rubric, I would come back to my classroom. I would complain with one of my other colleagues who was also math and science, and we didn't really do anything about it other than complain. So that kind of started, that idea of PD needing to be meaningful and relevant. And it took me a while to kind of figure out that responsibility lies on me to make sure that I'm getting something out of it, as opposed to it lying on, the administrator who's planning that professional development. From there, I became an administrator. I worked in the realm of curriculum first. I was a supervisor and then a director of curriculum. And I also attended a PD session in my new district when I was hired, and it was over President's Day weekend. And I showed up on the Friday. I was looking for one of our teachers, couldn't find her, and I was trying to figure out, like, okay, why is she not here today? And then somebody told me, well, she took off and she made it a 4-day weekend. And I said, well, today's a professional development day. Is she allowed to take off? And, why is she taking off? And when I looked at what we were doing as far as professional development, we were herding all 350 instructional staff members into one room. We were talking at them for 3 hours that day. And as I kind of reflected over the weekend about it, I realized, you know what, I don't blame her for taking off because it's not meaningful to what she does on a daily basis. And when I came back the following Tuesday after President's Day weekend, I realized that about 33% of our staff members were taking off to make it a 4-day weekend. And that is kind of when it dawned on me that we are not doing professional development right. We need to change it.
That was very reflective of you to see that.
So in your book, The 4 O'Clock Faculty, A Rogue Guide to Revolutionizing Professional Development, you state the following: the truth is professional development often falls to 1 or 2 district or building administrators. And I believe this rings true for many teachers out there too. Why is this reality? And why is teacher learning so important for our students?
So I think, unfortunately, I see it even in my building as a principal. We have staff meetings generally on Tuesday afternoons once a month. And, our staff meeting starts at 3:45. And there are some days where it's 3:25 before I'm finally sitting down to type up the agenda, just based on the number of other things that I'm doing. Mm-hmm. And, we unfortunately put that responsibility on whichever administrator or, coach or whoever's in charge of that, planning that professional development. And, oftentimes I think it comes down to people needing to kind of step up and take charge of their own PD. And even, another of my colleagues kind of came to me and said they were going through their staff meetings and figuring out that it was nothing but policy and procedure. And they went ahead on their own and they started doing an article of the week. So on Monday, they would send an article out to their colleagues. And then on Friday mornings, they would get together to talk about that. And, even if they weren't getting what they needed in their staff meeting, they kind of realized that it came down to figuring it out on their own. And I think that's my whole goal with this is getting everyone to take that responsibility for their own learning. You're never going to get everything that you need. And when one person or 2 people or however many are in charge of planning professional development for a number of people, they don't necessarily know what everyone needs. They don't know kind of the wants and what's meaningful for a person on a daily basis. So it is important that we kind of take that piece on our own and figure out exactly what it is that we need.
I feel that in my experience, teacher learning has been on the back burner, not explicitly talked about. Mm-hmm. I think it is talked about more so now, but I believe teacher learning is critical to student learning. And, that needs to be trumpeted from up high, and wrapped around, that we need our teachers to be learning and doing and like that EdCamp on the LeadUp chat. People were talking about EdCamp TV, where teachers have control of their time and, choice in what they learn. But that mm-hmm. teacher learning piece is huge, and giving teachers control.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's a piece where you have different students in your classroom every year. You have new content that is needs to be done every year. Don Wettrick, who hosts the Start Ed Up podcast and who wrote Pure Genius, he has a quote that I think came from his dad, where he says, I don't care if you teach for 20 years, just don't teach the same year 20 years in a row. And I think that's the biggest piece, is we are expecting our students to learn something new every day. And you know, unfortunately, we as educators sometimes make that decision. Well, I don't need to learn anything new. But if we want those student outcomes to look different, then we need to continue that learning on our own.
Mm-hmm. And a teacher, they have to experience that type of learning. I know all of you've been to probably an EdCamp, an unconference, mm-hmm. and I see teachers walk out, and I know what it was like for me. I went to EdCamp Omaha, and I walked out of there, and I was like, oh, wow, this is fantastic, you know? And it changed me, just having control of my time and what I went to. And then that's what set me on, you know, my own professional development. But until I didn't know that before. Mm-hmm. So we have to get our teachers to experience it.
Yeah, it's very empowering when you have that type of learning.
So what words of wisdom and advice would you give a teacher who wants to grow, learn, and lead, but is not inspired by PD at his or her school and maybe complains, like we've all done at some point?
So in the book, I talk about finding your rogue friends. So rogue is an acronym. It does stand for a relevant, organized group of underground educators. And that whole idea is that sometimes you're not going to find what you need in your setting, and you need to kind of find those rogue friends, as I call them. You need to find those people who are similar in mindset. Sometimes they may be sitting in the classroom next door to you. Sometimes they may be on Twitter or Voxer or somewhere out there. And I would say to those people who are not getting what they need in their setting, you need to kind of expand your boundaries in terms of professional learning. So whether it is connecting through Twitter or even talking with a colleague who may work at a different school in your district or wherever it may be, is finding those people who are going to challenge your thinking, who are going to help you grow professionally. It's not always going to be an administrator that's going to help you grow professionally. Sometimes it may be a colleague or a coach, or you know, sometimes it's a student who kind of challenges our thinking in terms of how we learn, and really kind of changing that. I would say find that EdCamp wherever it is near you. Again, when you talked about how it's kind of a life-changing experience, it absolutely is. I went to my first EdCamp in 2013. It changed how I saw professional development and learning for myself, and then kind of realized that this is what we need to do in our schools to make sure that everybody's getting what they need. One of the examples I also talk about in the book, I was always tasked with professional development for our school nurse. And so she was required to come to our monthly staff meetings. And I used to rack my brain every month, is how do I make this at all relevant for our nurse? It's certainly not my area of expertise. Mm-hmm. But that's always what I try to consider, is let me remember my school nurse, because if I remember to help her get something that she needs in terms of professional learning, then it is something that everyone can get. So it's really asking those people to kind of find out what they need and go out there and find those people. So whether it's starting an article of the week club or starting a book club with your colleagues, just finding something that's going to help you grow professionally.
Yeah, I think it's so critical that we are thinking about how to help everybody grow professionally.
Okay. So tell us a little bit more about your core beliefs about successful professional learning for teachers, Rich.
So number one, again, it has to be meaningful and relevant. And I think that's often the portion that we miss. With professional development, we do a lot of kind of, you know, one day, here's a new topic, or here's a new piece of content, or here's a new program that we're using. Here's your one day of training, and now take it and put it into action in your classroom. And unfortunately, usually it has nothing to do with what that teacher may or may not do in their classroom. So it's trying to kind of change that mindset and get into that idea of making it meaningful for what a person is doing in the classroom. So if we can kind of get around finding what it is teachers need. So I think a lot of that has to do with feedback. So if you're doing surveys to find out what it is that people want or need within their setting, that can be done through, a Google form. Something that I kind of suggest for staff meetings, which I've done before, is something called tip jars. So the whole idea of, putting out 2 jars before a meeting is going to start with 2 different topics that the person who's leading the PD is ready and prepared to present. And then as people come in, they're dropping a marble in those tip jars, talking about what it is they may want to learn on that day. So it's something that's simple, but people tend to listen a lot more if it is something that they're interested in, that is relevant to what they're doing in the classroom. Another piece of that involves choice, and I think that is a huge piece that we need to take more advantage of. I think that's why the EdCamp model has been so successful, is that teachers have that choice to go where they want. They have that choice to leave if it is something that is not relevant. And initially, I think when the EdCamp movement kind of started, it has grown into something that I think is so meaningful for educators. And I think that's why we have seen more and more EdCamps be planned. And initially, I think some educators thought it might be a fad where, this EdCamp thing is going to be powerful for a couple of years, but then we're going to move on to something else. But because of that choice piece, and educators are choosing to be there, they're choosing the different sessions that they're doing, they're talking to other educators. So I believe that choice piece is also a powerful part of PD. And I think as we can bring that into our schools as much as we can, I think it is a powerful piece of that professional development learning. Another piece is taking advantage of time. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of time for professional development. Some districts do a better job of prioritizing their time and really making sure that teachers know professional development and professional learning is an important part of what we do. So they do prioritize it, but taking advantage of every minute that we have. So, whether you are in your car, and you have a half-hour commute and you can listen to a podcast or connect via Voxer with other educators who are like-minded. If it's that 15 minutes before or after school that you're required to be there, we've done things like Tech Mex Tuesday, where we're asking teachers to come in and learn something new just for 15 minutes. We're serving up some chips and salsa or breaking out the quesadilla maker. So as much as I joke about this, if you do serve food, teachers will show up. So it's a huge part of what we do for professional development. And then the last piece is kind of honoring those minutes. I'm very big on trying to start meetings on time and end them on time, and not keep anybody longer than they have to be there. And also utilizing those minutes to share meaningful PD. So, the days of standing up in front of a staff meeting and reading from an agenda or reading from a PowerPoint to people that they can read on their own, they need to be long gone. Unfortunately, there are some educators who are still doing those things, but we need to stop doing those things. We need to make sure that it is meaningful and relevant every minute that we have, and not waste any of those minutes. And then the final piece for me is any professional development needs to lead to improved student learning outcomes. So, the PD is meaningless if it's not affecting change in our classrooms. And I think that's a big piece of what we've been missing as well is, unfortunately we do PD and we think that, okay, everybody's taking this back to their classroom and they're changing the way they're instructing students, or they're changing what learning looks like in the classroom. I think we need to make sure that ultimately that's the end goal, right? How is this going to look different for students? How is this going to help them to learn better? And that ultimately needs to be the final piece.
I agree with what you said there. We can present something, but that doesn't give the teachers the process for how to do it. And I think that's what you want. You want, okay, here's something great, but here's how I did it, or here's a process for how to implement it in your classroom. And it's not enough just to say, here's an idea. We have to show it in action and then show how to implement it.
Well, and also the follow-up support too, for people that require that in the classroom, I think is ideal as well.
Yeah, one of the things that has been very successful for me in terms of our staff meetings in my current setting is just modeling an instructional strategy. So last year we did a QR code scavenger hunt for our teachers. So they showed up at the end of the day. I asked them to grab an iPad and to find 2 teammates. And then we had a scavenger hunt throughout the building. So I had put up about 25 QR codes, which asked them to share a resource. And it was great because they had to find all of them, first of all. So it was kind of a fun activity. It wasn't just, sitting there and listening to me kind of drone on for an hour, but they were up and active and moving, finding those QR codes, sharing different resources with each other. And the best thing about it was a week later, our second grade team had a QR code scavenger hunt for all of the second grade students. So, and I was able to kind of help, show them some different resources that they could use to create that. But it really is about that modeling piece is, as an administrator, if I'm expecting you to do something with students, I better be willing to model that for you and show you what that looks like with staff. So, and I think that support piece is also the key that's missing as well, is how do we provide that ongoing support as teachers need it.
Right.
I want to jump in on your concept of time. The old concept is that we can only learn during school, right? Or right after school, and it's got to be with people to develop us. And we got to move, to this, with Voxer and Twitter and that we can develop out of that. And then the EdCamp piece with time, the fact that you can go anywhere you want and learn what you want, that time piece is just huge. Have you done anything with badges?
So in my previous setting, we had kind of moved toward that idea of working toward badges. I think it is something where it can be, when done the right way, can be a motivating factor for staff members. I have seen it done in other schools where they simply did a paper copy of the badge and posted it on the teacher's classroom door, which was awesome because as you would walk through the building, you would be able to see what teachers were experts in. So if you were looking for somebody who was an expert in, let's say, the responsive classroom, somebody had that badge on their door. You can go talk to them. You could find that out. And it was kind of motivating for the staff. And it certainly needs to be the right culture to kind of set that up and make sure that it doesn't become overly competitive where people are not really willing to share with others. But, I certainly think that is something that can be successful, especially if it's something that we're also trying to model for working with our students as well.
It's kind of the pineapple chart idea,
Right.
when you talked about using badges that way.
Which I think is a great idea. So Rich, let's say I've taken your advice, I'm inspired and I'm on fire as a teacher learner. And I want to share my passion with colleagues school-wide. When learning feels so amazing, it feels good, it's liberating. So how do I share? And what do you mean in your book by going rogue? I know you broke down a little bit of it before.
Yeah, and again, it's going out there and finding those people who you're going to connect with, who you're going to share with. So whether it is meeting for a couple of minutes before school or after school, there's another idea in the book which is Fight Club. starting a fight club. It's not the kind of fight club you're thinking about,
Right.
but really taking advantage of, we're all passionate educators. We're all passionate about something. Starting a debate and talking about some of those more controversial topics in education, connecting through Twitter. So if you're using, hashtag 4OCF or connecting with any of those other subgroups that are out there, LeadUpChat, TLAP, any of those hashtags where you're going to find like-minded individuals and educators who are willing to help you grow and help you connect, share, and collaborate.
Great advice.
It definitely is.
Right. All right. So let's shift to culture. Can teachers really? Okay. So let's say, teachers, want more out of professional development. Can they really change the professional development culture? And if yes, how?
So I think so. I think it does start from the ground up. It has to be kind of surrounding professional development. And you can start small. You can start one or two people. There's a line in the book that comes from a video on YouTube about the first follower. So I will share that via Twitter in a little bit. But the idea is that one person who is doing crazy things regarding professional development is just that. It's one crazy person. Once you have two people doing crazy things with professional development, that's a movement. And that's really where it starts from, finding that one other person who's going to go along with you. If you can make that one other person an administrator, it makes it much easier because it can grow faster, and that person has a lot more influence in terms of influencing what that culture looks like. But again, I think it can start from the ground up with multiple teachers. And once you have those people involved, even if it is something that you're not doing in your own setting, you can still have that PLN out there on Twitter or on Voxer that you're connecting with. We have a Voxer group, a 4OCF Voxer group, and there are educators who are the lone people in their buildings who are trying to move forward with professional learning. So it can be done. Sometimes it's difficult. The hardest thing to do is to change a culture, especially surrounding professional development. I know when I kind of started, I would sit in a meeting and people would stare at me without saying a word. And, after you do that enough, I would drive home in my car and say, like, okay, what did I do wrong there? Or what can I try next time? And it just makes you think a little bit more about how to improve the professional learning that's going on. So I think it does start small, but I think ultimately over time you can kind of change that culture.
Excellent, Rich. So as we wrap up, could you share how listeners can continue to connect and grow? I love that you shared about the 4 o'clock faculty Voxer group, any extra tips you have there, and also tell us what's coming up for you in the near future.
Sure. So 4o'clockfaculty.com, FOUR, o'clockfaculty.com. We are also at hashtag 4OCF on Twitter. We do have the 4 o'clock faculty Voxer group as well. The person to talk to about that is Matt Larson from New Jersey. So I can share his information via Twitter as well, but he can connect you with the Voxer group. And, we have daily conversations about not only professional learning, but just innovation in classrooms and getting people to kind of improve learning for everyone. The next thing for me, so there's several things on the stove at this point, but one of the things that's on the back burner is a podcast. So it's something that my colleague Trevor and I, who co-founded 4 o'clock faculty with me, we've been working on. We're trying to figure out what the best way to do that is, but hopefully it's something that will be coming out this year at some point.
Awesome. We'll look forward to seeing and hearing about that. And look, your podcast, you're going to be on our podcast now as it channels into iTunes also. So awesome. That's awesome.
Very cool.
That is great. So Rich, thank you so much for joining LeadUpTeach this morning. I know our audience enjoyed hearing about your personal journey, and a huge thank you to our amazing audience who tuned in this morning to LeadUpTeach from LeadUp Chat this morning on YouTube.
And do check out Rich's book, 4 O'Clock Faculty. It has a lot of great tips, and it's real, and it speaks to teachers and administrators. So we will share out this morning's LeadUpTeach episode on Twitter using the hashtag LeadUpTeach. We're excited to announce the date and time of our next LeadUpTeach episode, and we want everyone to go ahead and mark their calendars. Episode 33 will air on Thursday, March 22nd. We look forward to welcoming Shelley Burgess and Beth Huff discussing Lead Like a Pirate.
All right, so we encourage everyone to check out past LeadUpTeach episodes on our YouTube channel, and also you can subscribe to the LeadUpTeach podcast in iTunes, so you can listen to past interviews on the go.
Yes, have a terrific day, everyone, and thanks again for joining us. We are signing off. Lead on and lead up. Thank you, Rich, so much.
Thank you.